Thank you. This is Michael Finch with the David Horowitz Freedom Center, back with part 2 of the Finch version of the Glazov gang. We've got Dwight Schultz, Bill Whittle, and Paul Croshaw with us tonight. Thank you again for joining us, gentlemen. We spent the first segment talking about the fiscal cliff. I want to pivot now and talk about the second term. Obama, the thought was that he was going to tackle jobs, right, in the first term, and of course he went with Obamacare because that was the agenda. We're already hearing now that obviously gun control magically is now going to be a major issue, and immigration is going to be another major issue. We're facing a lot of problems, debt, taxes, all these things. None of that is Obama.
Don't forget global warming.
Global warming. Well, that may be third. Cap and trade. What do you see as are we? The Second Amendment. December there was record gun sales. Paul, I'm going to ask you. What do you think Obama's going to do in the second term? Is he really going to go after guns? And
I think the gun issue would just sort of fade away. He might do something with the assault rifle. But the passion of that first few days after that horrible massacre has kind of, gone down. I think the big thing is just the fiscal crisis that we're going to be in. I think with the healthcare mandates kicking in, and what businesses are going to be saddled with to get going and create jobs, I don't think it's going to happen. And so I think he'll have his hands full with those two big issues.
Dwight, what worries me is that he's not worried about what the big issue, what should be the issues he needs to tackle. He goes off into these on these tangents, the things that are really, and that's what worries me, that he's cap and trade and things that will actually kill the economy. Is he going to go off on that track, or is he going to do what the country?
No. The diagnosis is he's a neo-Marxist socialist so he runs off to every world socialist conference that he can. His objective, the reason, it's obvious why he's not interested in jobs, because that would help the United States of America. His purpose is to denude the power of this country. It's been his purpose since he was in school. He said it. He voiced it. We have tapes of him saying what he wants to do to this country, to bankrupt the coal industry, to redistribute, that the Supreme Court should have been an instrument to redistribute income, but the Founding Fathers didn't deal with that. Funny that they didn't, because they weren't Marxist communists. You have people who, this guy is a Marxist. It's the diagnosis. It is the progression of the disease. You can predict it. He's not going to deal with jobs. He's going to deal with redistributing income, doing everything that he can to make this great country into a much smaller one.
Do you have any argument with that, Bill?
He's 100% right. And I want to come to the gun thing in a second, but really, he's exactly right. And Dinesh D'Souza has a theory about his colonial his colonial issues. But really, the best thing I've ever read on this subject was our friend Evan Sayet wrote a book called The Kindergarten of Eden.
Excellent. Yeah.
And I'll give you the argument in a nutshell. I think this is not only the correct explanation, I think it has predictive power. What Evan Sayet said is that liberals look back at thousands of years of history and see nothing but conflict. And since everything has been tried, they realized, their theory is, the reason there's conflict is because people disagree about things. And so the entire theory was, if you could just stop people from having strong emotions about things strong enough to disagree, you wouldn't have any war. Without any war, wouldn't you have any of these other ills? So he basically said that the fundamental aspect of modern progressivism is the unwillingness and the inability to discriminate, to say that one thing is better than something else, right? And here's where we get to the point. If you are unwilling to discriminate between a guy who's rich because he worked hard and a guy who's poor because he didn't work hard, or whatever reason. Yeah. If you were not willing to say that the difference is the work, that you're not willing to discriminate between these two, then there's only one explanation for why a guy is rich and a guy is poor. The guy who's rich cheated, and the guy who's poor was cheated upon. A powerful nation is powerful because it stole resources from the world, and a poor nation is poor because it had its resources stolen from it. If you accept this theory, then Dwight is 100% correct. Barack Obama's mission in life is to restore America to a place where it is no greater than or less than any one of the other 183 or whatever countries in the world. All of our wealth has to be stolen, because there's no way for the liberal philosophy to accept the fact that we work harder, that we have a better system, that we have superior moral sense, that we have a better society. Western society is clearly better to me in every way, and not just Western society, Western art. You look at the statue of David, which is carved out of the hardest substance known to primitive man. It's out of marble, and you can see capillaries in his arms. This is not the same as a mask that's hacked out of wood, or as a papier-mâché thing that other cultures have as a pinnacle of their cultures, and liberals hear this kind of talk and they go, absolutely. Are you saying that we're better than them? Categorically, yes. I'm categorically, yes, saying across the board, yes. Across the board, we're better than them. They cannot handle this because of some internalized guilt and some daddy issues they have, and that's not really my problem. But ultimately, I think he's absolutely right. The job is to reduce America, not to destroy America. It looks like it. Well, you do have to, in fact, destroy America to get it to a place.
The America that we know
to
of
get it
today.
to a place of parity.
But I'm not sure if it's conscious. They just have a thing about equality, 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 equality. It's their whole persona. So I don't know if they actually consciously know that they're doing
when
that.
he was asked, when Obama was asked about American exceptionalism,
Yeah.
he said, "Oh, well, if, like Greece or like
Norway.
But he's
German
also
exceptionalism,
appointed John Holdren, Cass Sunstein, individuals who have already on tape have said American exceptionalism is bogus, and we have to do away with it. We have to redistribute income around the world. This is a purposeful. You don't appoint someone who says that kind of thing, and you don't say it yourself unless it is your intention. The people you appoint are the badges that you wear.
That's right. How many Marxists do you know? How many Marxists have you associated with your entire life, like Van Jones and stuff?
Well, but you know, a clarity of a reality they don't get because they don't even have a sense of what Judeo-Christian values are about. And to me, that's my whole thing.
Oh, I think they do have a very clear sense of what they are. They're just bound and determined to destroy them.
Yeah.
But if you don't understand that, you can't perceive reality correctly. They're constantly getting reality wrong. They always pick the wrong bad guys. They don't know how to pick a bad guy. They don't know how to pick, like you say, why is David better than a mask from Africa that someone carved out of a bark of a tree?
Listen,
For
go ahead.
some reason, anyway, I was just saying that those Genesis values bring reality, make it so clear to everybody. Make it so clear.
The Communist Manifesto supersedes that.
Yeah,
They
because
see that
they
as
think they're
evil, Paul.
smarter. That's the man-God thing.
Yeah, I mean, Judeo-Christian, that's evil. I mean, they're trying to supplant that.
Yeah.
You can answer
But
all of
do
these.
they not know it? Do they not know it, or they actually know it and reject it?
They know it.
I don't know if they know
They
it.
do
They
know it.
They know
They
it. They
do.
despise it.
I don't know if anyone even. I don't even know if they
No.
even heard those
The
ideas.
idea. You have to understand the kind of people that we're dealing with here. The idea, the entire essence of Christianity, in my understanding of it, is that we have an internal judge that lives within us, and a society like the United States is based on a virtuous people. If people are virtuous and they regulate their own behavior, then you don't need a very powerful state regulating behavior for them. You can allow them to be free because most of the time they will try to do the right thing because they've got to answer to somebody in the afterlife. That idea of individual responsibility and individual governance is antithetical to a society where you get to tell other people what to do. And that's really what you need to understand about these psychopaths. All of it ultimately is driven by the burning desire to tell other people what to do.
Right.
So Marx understood religion all too well.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
absolutely. Well, the opium of the people. I mean, he understood that you can't have that. You have to replace it with a man, secularism. And he understood it very well, and he wrote about it. Yeah. They're about setting about doing it. And this president, it is an astonishing thing that he appointed Van Jones a communist, and he never has had to comment.
No, of course not.
85,000 Americans died in 2 wars, Vietnam and Korea, fighting communists. This president appoints one who, by the way, said he wants to bring the whole system down.
But you talking about Van Jones?
Yeah.
I thought you might have been talking about the Secretary of State,
Right.
Yeah.
who is who colluded with our enemies while in uniform at a time of war. It is the textbook definition of treason.
Right.
It is the textbook definition of treason. Just like saying to the Russian ambassador, if you will just lay low until I can get reelected, if you will help me politically, personally gain, I will give you the missile defense system for the United States of America. That is precisely, correctly analogous to what Benedict Arnold did. He said, I will sell out the defenses of my country to my enemies in a time of war if you will give me something for me personally. If that's not treason, then the word has no meaning.
The only difference is Benedict Arnold, before he committed treason, was a hero. He was a great revolutionary. Obama never had that. We'll never give Obama that.
No, they're talking about FDR too. At least FDR left us some Hoover dams and some roads and some things, and Obama with his stimulus left us with nothing.
You mentioned Benedict Arnold, and I can't remember who wrote the column who said that John Roberts is the Benedict Arnold of our day because of the Obamacare decision. Bill, would you disagree with that?
No, I wouldn't disagree with that. I think what happened with John Roberts. There seems to be somewhat compelling evidence that Roberts actually changed his mind. And he changed his mind after the President of the United States basically grandstanded and said, this Supreme Court had better do the right thing.
Yeah.
And I think, like every single other major conservative in this country, they all have Stockholm Syndrome, every single one of them. And John Roberts decided, well, look, if I'm not going to be the guy to take health care away from America, I'll just punt the ball. The short form in terms of my reason for considering him a traitor is not because he made a ruling I disagree with, but look at what did his ruling say.
Yeah.
His ruling said that this mandate is a tax. When it was sold to the people, and let's remember how it squeaked by in the dark hours of midnight, but during the entire sale of Obamacare, it was strenuously told us that it was not a tax. So if I'm the Chief Justice of the United States and say, this law, which was sold as not a tax, is in fact a tax, I strike down the law and say, resell it as a tax if you want to resell it as a tax, but we were sold. We went to buy a Corvette and somebody gave us an Escort. And it's obvious on its face when he says, no, it's a tax. Well, it wasn't sold as a tax.
Right. Yeah.
So therefore we get to keep the law?
Yeah.
How does that make sense?
It doesn't. Dwight, I want to ask you something different. 2012, looking back, two things that I'm going to remember.
I wish the Mayans had been right, by the way.
Well, the joke was the world deserves them because we reelected Obama.
Yes, right.
Other than Obama winning and all the big issues, one of the things is Clint Eastwood in the chair. Wish it had a larger impact. The other thing is when Barack Obama said the future does not belong to those who slander the Prophet of Islam.
Sweet Lord.
I think that portends very dangerous things. It hasn't been reported. Either comment on that or what else from 2012 can...
Listen, he said the United States, from a standpoint of numbers, is one of the largest Muslim nations in the world. That's what the President of the United States said. It is so far off the mark.
And their impact on the revolution and the foundation of the country.
Yes, it's like the captain of a ship heading south saying we're going to Iceland. Or there are penguins on board who are driving the ship or something. It's beyond belief, this president, what he can say. And of course you have a media that just falls down because
it's Time Magazine of the Year, Man of the Year.
Again. But there is no hope from the stand unless someone very high up in the Republican Party stands up and just say the emperor is naked.
It won't be somebody very high up.
No, it's not going to be.
It's going to be somebody coming.
A child in the story. A child did it, but the child does it in the presence of those who need to hear it.
That's right.
And then they say, "Well, by God, you're right. He is a Marxist. He is."
Paul, let me ask you: Is that person you mentioned popular culture, which is interesting? Is that going to be a leader of the Republican Party? Who's going to be that person? Is it going to be someone out of the popular culture?
I don't know. It could be another Joe the plumber or someone like that who does, ask a tough question. Or
I mean, revolutions, and it's all we're the counter-revolutionary, right? Revolutions can start in strange places and start with people that are not necessarily the leaders or perceived leaders.
Well, it was the Tea Party, wasn't it? And I'm not sure what it's going to be now. I mentioned Marco Rubio, and you weren't a fan of him because he did something on a show, he kind of backpedaled a bit.
No, I said that I saw Marco Rubio already backpedaling. I loved him, but then I saw him pulling back.
Is he doing the Stockholm Syndrome like Bill was saying about like Roberts? He wants to be patted on the back in the cafeteria halls of academia or something?
There seems to be some rule that you can't, you have to be gentle, you can't be like Democrats, you can't tell them the truth.
We want to look like reasonable people.
Right, reasonable.
We don't want to be the knuckle-dragging savages that they make us out to be.
But when has the truth ever been unreasonable?
It doesn't matter. Mitt Romney, one of the most decent men ever, is a vampire, and he's a heartless, soulless swine.
One of the things that I always try to do is not be an angry Republican. And now I'm questioning myself.
There's a difference between. There's a difference between anger. There's a difference between being hateful and being outraged. Yeah. There's a fundamental difference, and really the ultimate difference is you've got to carry a bit of a sense of humor, and especially a self-deprecating sense of humor. But you have to be able to be clear that the things that you're outraged about are not individuals, but there are things that people should be outraged about. You should be outraged at lying. You should be outraged at stealing. Mm-hmm. You should be outraged when people have stolen your children and your grandchildren's money. You should be upset about that. Mm-hmm. But what it really does ultimately take is it takes somebody who not only has the outrage, but you also have to have the passion is great, but you have to have the fundamental ability to flip first you start with the outrage, and then you turn around and say, folks, that's not what America is. We've been told for our entire lives that we are running out of oil, and there is now more oil available to America today under our feet than at any time in history, because of the genius of our engineers and the genius of our scientists and the genius of our capitalist system. There's more energy available to us every day, and the more energy we burn, strangely enough, the more the reserves are increasing. That's miraculous. And cheap energy is the lifeblood of the economy. We can't compete with China's labor rates because our people can't live on Chinese labor rates, but they have to import their energy. If we just sink a tube into the ground, we can then, our prices become internationally competitive. We can clean the clock of the rest of the world today if we would just undo these shackles around our ankles. And that's when people hear, oh, okay.
We've only got a couple minutes
I think you're right.
left. I want to, look, not really predictions, but some hope for I live in this kind of bubble working for David Horowitz, and I know people like yourselves. So I see hope. I see hope in the popular culture. I really do. Dark Knight, The Hobbit. I mean, there is this movement. Seems to be this movement. Andrew Klavan's new book, Killer in the Wind, best book of fiction you're going to read in a number of years. So there
From Andrew Klavan?
Excellent novel. Well, of course.
He's one of my best friends.
Dwight, is the culture changing? I mean, you can only force feed this garbage so much, and the American people resist. They don't go to the shows. They don't buy the books. Do you see something turning? Is the culture turning in our direction?
I think events change things. There were two students, I think, that were just arrested with sort of like Bernardine Dorn and Bill Ayers, with guns and bomb material in their house. Very well-to-do, well-educated. It's a repeat. We're unfortunately, I think, now we have a Marxist as president, and nobody wants to admit it. I think we're in the strangest time that this country has ever been in, and I'm not quite sure that how we're going to get out of it. I keep praying for events, some event to expose where we are, and it may mean a terrible tragedy, like the collapse of the economy completely, with everybody seeing we couldn't withstand the weight, and that this guy's lying to us.
Well, let me ask you real quick, Paul. Is faith? We have, is God on our side? I mean,
I don't know.
Lincoln liked to think God was on his side, but we do have faith, and faith has to count for something.
I agree with Dwight that we do need a big disaster to wake people up. I don't think then maybe the movies will sell more. It'll be maybe a snowball effect. People will start listening to us more. But I just have to have my faith just to keep myself sane and not being too angry or outraged or, saying ridiculous things. Yeah. I'm just trying to keep my hope up because things change. Who would have thought the commies would have, collapsed in Russia, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. But so I just have to keep myself measured. But I do love the idea about in the argument, grabbing that one piece of their argument, flipping it out. It always collapses. Yeah. Their ideas always collapse if you can flip that around.
Yeah. And Bill, we've got to get more Americans hearing your message. Well, or at least
pulling the moral plank out that we were talking about earlier. Take the gun thing, right? There's nothing we're going to be more demonized on. You've got 20 children's faces that you're arguing against. You're arguing against 20 children's faces, and they know that that's going to intimidate everybody to shut up. But really, you have to start using a logical argument with actual emotional passion. So, for example, they just did a survey just a couple days ago. You know what the happiest country in the world is? We're 17th, by the way. We used to be number one. You know who's happiest? Switzerland.
I was going to.
You know what else is interesting about Switzerland?
Everybody has a gun.
Every single household in Switzerland is required by law to have a fully automatic weapon in the house. The happiest country in the world is required by law to have a fully automatic weapon in the house. So it's not the inanimate object. Because every single house in Switzerland has a fully automatic inanimate object sitting on the table. What Switzerland doesn't have is it doesn't have a pop culture that glorifies violence where people get done down in slow motion. And look, ultimately, when you really get down to it, there's only one thing responsible for that killing, and that's that guy. Right. But what Hollywood, it's not even just the movies, Mike, because we've had people getting shot in movies for 100 years. But when John Wayne would shoot a guy like this would go down, you get these slow motion 30 minutes of orgasmic sort of gun violence. But the other thing is that when somebody shot somebody in the movies in the 40s and 50s and 60s, it was the good guy. It was a hero. It's the rise of the anti-hero. It's the rise of the guy in the black trench coats. It's the rise of this nihilistic, self-destructive, suicidal death wish, spraying bullets and casings in slow motion. That's what's changed.
Okay. Well, folks, we're out of time. Gentlemen, thank you so much. Arm yourself, America, and there is hope. So I think those are our messages for tonight. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you.